topics in HR.
Whether it's passive talent or it's active talent.
That's a soft skill that really gets undersold in the hiring process.
How to manage in the virtual environment.
You get a diverse, cultured group of people. It's a win-win for everybody.
More conversion from candidate leads.
What does that look like in this new virtual world?
Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday, noon Eastern time, and you know what that means. It is time for Talent Experience Live, coming to you live from just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a nice little booming metropolis known as Ambler. I am your host, Devin Foster, and this is your weekly look at the hot topics in HR, interviews with leaders in the industry, as well as hot new HR technology. And today we are covering everything that you need to know, from recruitment to talent acquisition and talent management and anything in between. So feel free to share this out to your network. Sharing is caring. One of the beautiful things about doing things live is the ability to interact with people in real time. This is a little bit different than a Zoom meeting. No one is going to force you to put your camera on or anything along those lines. You can hop into the comment section and be as anonymous as you like. Pose your questions, put out some thought-provoking comments, whatever the case may be. But remember, if you are not able to catch the full episode, you can always watch the full episode immediately after the program on YouTube. That's www.youtube.com. Or you can always catch the blog recap, which comes out about a week or so afterwards. We break down the episode into short little digestible snippets for you that you can share out to your network, share to your boss if you want to look fantastic for your next meeting. We also do a nice little write-up in there as well, in case you are in a quiet environment like I have been now that I am a father and I have to read things instead of playing music as loud as I possibly want to. But today's topic, the topic that you are going to be sharing out to your bosses and colleagues, is how AI can help you getting the most from fit scores, candidate discovery, and more. It seems that over the course of this pandemic, and we were kind of leading up to it in, early February of 2020, AI for best fit candidates has now gone mainstream. And I like to credit the good folks at Phenom for making that happen. But it seems TA teams still aren't leveraging the superpower that they need to. It's kind of like buying that brand new Roomba that sits in the corner of your house and never turning it on, still using the manual vacuum. It's great to have, it's nice to look at, but in order to really get value from it, you have to use it. So today we're going to tackle that. We're going to explain how AI can quickly help you visualize top talent faster with dynamic fit scores, next level discoverability capabilities, plus some training tricks and tips, trick or treat, it's Halloween season, to improve your AI over time, right? It isn't something that you flick the switch on, forget about it, and move forward. Just like your Roomba has to map your house, your AI has to map your candidates and what you have available as well. But before we jump into that, I always love to get the interaction from the crowd going. It seems like some folks haven't quite jumped into the comments section yet. So I'm going to pose an icebreaker question, which is, what is your go-to movie for the month of October? It can be a scary movie that kind of makes you jump in the middle of the night, wakes you up with nightmares, or it could just be something that puts you in the Halloween spirit. Maybe it's Halloween Town. Maybe it is. I see John Ryle jumps in and he says that's how he feels about his rowing machine. I have a Peloton in my house, does a great job as a clothes drying rack. So completely understand that, John. In my go-to movie for the month of October, which gets me into the Halloween spirit, it has to be Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin. And the reason for that is I am not a big Halloween fan. I see Jen jumps in the comments section and she says she loves the movie Halloween. I know Jen loves good, scary movies. Phenom says Hocus Pocus, another classic. How can you forget? I think that the remake may be coming out soon, so be sure to renew your Disney Plus subscription, but no free ads. Halloween 2, Tom says, is the absolute best, so I'm glad that we have some Halloween movie fans. It is the month of October, so get excited. Sarah says Hocus Pocus as well. Awesome. And get ready for trick or treat season. But back to the topic at hand. We are covering how AI can help you getting the most from fit scores, candidate discovery, and more. And today, we have a very special guest, one of my favorite people at Phenom, and our fantastic graphics guy is on vacation. Well-deserved, I might add. Shout out to Justin Devitt. He's not here, so bear with me for this intro, but please welcome onto the program, Shawn O'Donnell, product manager at Phenom. Don't worry, I won't quit my day job. Welcome to the program, Shawn. Oh, Shawn's busy. Is that Adam Schefter on the line?
Roomba stock. It's going to explode. I'm telling you. All right. See ya. Hey,
Shawn,
Devin.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. I hope I didn't interrupt an important phone call.
No, I hope our not sponsors Roomba enjoy all the shameless plugs you've been giving.
Yeah, I know. I think it's iRobot owns them. When I was an SDR here at Phenom, I used to call them endlessly. So I think it's time for them to pick up the phone now. I'm going to call them again. I'm not even an SDR anymore, but we can make it happen, Shawn.
It's time
Shawn,
for
nobody
them to clean up their act.
Yes, couldn't have said it better myself. Shawn, it is a tradition. No one steps into the Talent Experience Live spotlight without answering the icebreaker question. So I have to ask you, what is your favorite movie to put on in the month of October, and why is it not Christmas Vacation?
Thanks for stealing the thunder there. I'm going to go traditional here since I just went to Universal Studios Hollywood Horror Nights. And my favorite house in the Hollywood Horror Nights was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So the classic, not the Jessica Alba, like give me that cheesy 70s hard cut edit. Oh, there's another blip in the real horror movie. I think they're the best.
I like that. You know what? It terrified me at a young age. I was terrified of Freddy Krueger and all sorts of things. But now that I'm older, I don't know if it's just I've overcome my fear or I've realized these were some very cheesy, bad cut movies that put together. I don't know how this scared anybody, but it could be a combination of both. Shawn, one thing that is scaring the daylights out of people is artificial intelligence right now. They buy this fancy new technology, but oftentimes they're very confused by it. Should we blame Will Smith from the movie iRobot? Maybe, but we're not going to do that today. We're going to focus on the answer. So when you talk to talent acquisition professionals, why is there so much confusion around it when they use AI regularly, whether it be their cell phones, whether it be their vacuum is automated in the corner of their house? Why is there all this confusion?
Well, I think, first of all, you put into a good point. Movies and media definitely try to throw some shade on AI. And they definitely exaggerate what it's trying to do. And who knows, maybe eventually in the future we'll get there. But right now, I don't think it's anything particular to be scared about, especially not in our world, in the HR world. What we're trying to do here, and the way we design our AI, is to keep the human in the loop. It's meant to augment the human processes, not replace them. So I think if you start with that, then fear of the most common fear you hear, and this was the same thing we heard in the 90s with e-learning, right? Everybody said, "Oh, e-learning, you're going to replace all the instructors. You're going to replace the professors." Has that happened? No, it's augmented the professors and the instructors. AI is doing the same thing with HR professionals. It's not there to replace you. It's there to augment you.
Yeah, it's there to help make things easier for them. And I love that analogy of e-learning because you mentioned the hesitancy of it early on, right? And then fast forward to 2020, it's all a lot of kids know. I mean, I have nieces and nephews. Their first year of school was via e-learning. And yes, it still was that combination of teacher and Zoom meeting, but also here's some material for you to go off and study on your own or do in your free time while we do lunch break or whatever the case may be. You mentioned augmenting there, and speed is always something that is critical to recruiters. Why are they so hesitant to leverage technology that can automate things, that can make things easier? Is it because there's a lot of back end or a lot of work that has to ramp up for that? I think of setting up a new iPhone or connecting some Bluetooth device in your home. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get everything figured out. Is this the reason why recruiters are so hesitant, they need to fill positions yesterday and they don't have time to dedicate to set up something that'll help them fill positions tomorrow?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I hear is, our ecosystem is pretty large and there's a lot of facets, and AI is just one of them. Although this facet runs throughout our platform, most of the time it's operating in the background. But there are a few things that happen in the foreground where you can interact with it that many recruiters, don't know is there. So let's hope that they find out from this broadcast that it's there, and that when you do interact with it, it takes it from a baseline level to a hyper-personalized level. And ultimately, it's going to save you time. You may not see that immediately if you don't have the right perspective. So for example, something like matching criteria takes literally 5 minutes to set up, and then it's off and running and finding you candidates. If I brought you just one candidate that you didn't find on your own through AI, there's your 5 minutes back. But it's not going to bring you 5. It's going to bring you 10, 20, 30 based on the job.
That makes sense. And it's awesome to hear that, because it may start off as a trickle effect, right? As the machine continues to learn and continues to figure out exactly what type of person you're looking for, or candidate that you're looking for, which brings me back to my recruiter experience and Boolean searches. And Shawn, there is a reason why I host Talent Experience Live today, and I am no longer a recruiter. And that is because Command C, Command V was my life. I copy and pasted everyone else's hard work when it came to Boolean searches and just plugged them in for my candidates and tried to find them. So what role is AI playing when it comes to Boolean search? And is it replacing it? Or are recruiters still just kind of stuck in their ways doing what they know best? How do the two intermingle, if you will?
Sure. So for those of us who have been in the computer industry too long and know where computers started, Boolean logic was one of the very first things that computers did, and or not. And that was in the 1940s with the ENIAC. So if you'd like to use 1940s logic, by all means. If you would like to speed that up by 80 years, I think we can start talking about what AI does and what it does well. The other thing I will say there, Devin, is you kind of hit the nail inadvertently on the head when you said I would copy and paste other people's work, but you're also copy and pasting their mistakes. You're copy and pasting their biases. You're copy and pasting everything that has been. And I think anybody that thinks what has been doesn't need to change isn't quite trying to optimize. Like, it may have done it well in the past, but let's see if we can do it better now. And I think the way that we want to do that is replace Boolean. Now, even though our ecosystem will allow some Boolean in the advanced filter mode, you can draw up some pretty complex Booleans in there if you want to take that time, or you could set the matching criteria in 5 minutes and let it go. And then what the AI is going to do is going to watch who makes it through the process, who doesn't, who gets a thumbs up, a thumbs down, and the feedback from hundreds of different interactions a day, and adapt. Now, show me a Boolean that can adapt on the fly based on who you hired, and I'll use that Boolean.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. Number one, you mentioned 1940s technology, and you think of cars driving, back at that time, right? No power steering, no navigation, no air conditioning, right? All of these things have advanced, and we couldn't imagine life without it. So
and
when
no pesky seatbelts.
No, no pesky seatbelts as well. I will tell you, this is the third time that Siri has chimed into our conversation. AI's ears are ringing right now, and she would like her voice heard. We'll throw to her. She's our second guest on the program. A lot of people don't know that. But Shawn, the other thing around AI and Boolean is oftentimes when I think of recruiters searching, they're searching for job title, skills, and they're very specific. So it's with 4 years of experience, with XYZ skill, without this. And what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that AI has the ability to remove that without piece and just look at who you're moving through the process and saying, hey, this individual has 3 years of experience, this individual has 7 years of experience. And that can really help organizations as they talk about growing employees over time, right? It's not finding the best candidate that'll fit right now. It's who's going to be the best fit for the future. Am I making an assumption there that's slightly accurate, or am I way off?
Well, so there's only 4 things that our AI makes matches on. And again, remember, the matching is not picking. We're not picking anything. We're only suggesting. These are the people based on a job description and based on the resumes or the candidate profiles we've created on them. It appears they match in 4 areas, and it's not appear. They match in 4 areas, and 4 only. The title, the skill, the location, and the experience. And you can manipulate any one of those, particularly the experience and the location. As a recruiter, you can do that. You can also manipulate which skills you're looking for versus which ones you aren't. But here's something where it goes a little bit deeper. And again, comparing it to Boolean, what Boolean doesn't do. Boolean does not know the relationship of a title to a skill. And it does not know the relationship of a skill to another skill. So we have the semantic matching, we have exact matching, and then we also have ranking of skills based on the title. So again, that may change over time. A given title might require a new skill that becomes much more relevant than a previous skill. These are things that the AI will adapt and learn over time versus just staying static.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Now, when we've had a couple episodes around job descriptions, and I know that AI initially pulls skills from job descriptions. What can recruiters do to ensure that the criteria that they have within a job description? Another thing I was very guilty of copy and pasting. I'll let you know, Shawn. But what can you do to ensure that the AI is working for them and not against them, since that is the initial source of information?
I just want to say I'm happy your career in plagiarism has stopped and you're onto this. This is much better for you. It's a good use of your skills. But anyway, what can people do? So let me describe the process. The job parser, when you write a job description, and as we all know, job descriptions are not to a formula. They try to be, some are copy and pasted, but I can take the same exact title and see 3 different job descriptions. So that happens in organizations, and we know that. The job parser is going to go in there, read the job description, and through natural language processing, pick out the skills and pull them into the matching criteria. The way to think of it is we're getting you 80% of the way there. So that's good. Now it's your chance to make it awesome. And the way to make it awesome is to say, I've had a conversation with the hiring manager. Here are some skills that they mentioned that aren't in the job description. I'm going to put them into the matching criteria. Here are some skills that came out of that job description that, they're really not skills that are relevant to here. That happens. So I'm going to drop those from the job description and then from the matching criteria. And then finally, what you're going to do is we'll do an initial ranking based on what we know of job titles and say, these are the top 3 skills. We've starred them. We're considering them top skills. You may have learned something else about that. You may have learned there's a new skill that's a top skill, or that isn't a top skill anymore. So when you remove that, or when you put a new top skill in, the AI just learned that. And moving forward, it'll use that information as it pulls skills from the next job and similar jobs down the line. And also what we're trying to put in is processes, and we'll see this releasing soon, where you only have to do that for one job in your workload. So say you have 4 or 5 different product manager jobs. We can use the AI to say, well, they've edited this one job. Let me do that same edit to all the other jobs, because that's a better baseline. And then that becomes the baseline for a job that's almost an exact match.
That makes sense, because when you think of recruiters, oftentimes they are focused on a specific set of candidates for a specific roles. So if it's, product managers or marketers or whatever the case may be, based on your organization, the segments that they have, you don't want to have to do that 16, 17 times for all of your specific positions. But once, in tracking that throughout, is certainly something that helps. It's almost like the AI is plagiarizing itself, Shawn. So I learned from AI, that's what I'll say. But Shawn, we talk all the time about ideal candidates. Right? Mm-hmm. I think of hiring managers saying, hey, we hired so-and-so last year. They are the ideal candidate. We have a very similar role that opened up. Can we hire someone very similar with an arguably accurate skill set? When we talk about ideal candidates in the AI world. It's something, I think, completely different. What benefits do recruiters have from identifying an ideal candidate in the system that they wouldn't have if it was just a hiring manager handing over and saying, hey, I want a carbon copy of this candidate? Yeah.
And this is one of our least used features, so I'm glad you brought it up. It's almost like you were scripted to do it, but you weren't. So the ideal candidate talks about what is the difference between what you think you wanted to hire versus what you're actually hiring. And this is something that AI does really well. It's a menial task. It finds the difference or the delta between your matching criteria and who you're actually hiring. And it's almost as if you're saying, search for people just like this. So what's a great technique for this is when you first get to a job and you have no candidates, do you have an employee in mind? Is there a guy named Devin who does really good plagiarism? And I just happen to have a title called plagiarize, copy and paste. Yeah. So I said, Devin's doing this really great. I'm going to make him the ideal candidate first because I want 18 Devin to come down the pipeline. Now I start getting people in the pipeline and I've found somebody totally different than Devin, but an ideal candidate. As a matter of fact, I'm moving that person to interview with the manager. You're going to want to go and add that person as an ideal candidate. And again, it finds that delta. What's the change? And then it accounts for that change, adapts the algorithm, and gets you more folks closer to what you want to hire.
Makes sense. I just watched Ratatouille the other day, and it reminds me of when you're mixing foods, right? In order to get that perfect flavor that you're trying to get. It's another free ad for Disney there. But when you're talking about candidates, and it's not always yes or no, right? There's a lot of gray areas when you're recruiting. So it makes sense that it should adapt over time and come into play. Now, Shawn, you mentioned that there are a slew of candidates that come through by identifying an ideal candidate, right? Could be 18, 19, 20, however many it is. After that, where does fit score come into play? Does it rank them? Because obviously no two candidates are alike. So does it rank them based on some of those 4 criteria that you said? And how can you improve that based upon a role that perhaps could be a hybrid model? It could be remote for a specific candidate. Can you self-select those in order to really hone in on that exact gray area that you're looking for?
Yeah, and this is what we talked about before, the matching criteria. Once you get that set, and even if as you're going through the job, you need to change that, the system will dynamically adapt for any changes that you add or take away. But yeah, so the application fit score is once you are inside a job as a candidate or a lead or an applicant, we will issue a match score. So that if you have, for some of these jobs, I've seen 400 or 500 candidates. How do you get to the best candidates fast enough? Well, you sort on the fit score and you see here are some A fits, here are some B fits, C fits. I'll give a little tip where people get lost, and I always say this is like finding gold, and it's like finding gold. So there are things like that are incomplete profiles, right? So somebody submits a resume that is beautiful. I'll tell you a perfect live example of this. Somebody said, why didn't your resume parser pick up this resume? And it was for a graphic designer. Well, wouldn't you know, excuse me, this graphic designer did an amazing, beautiful, colorful resume that clearly highlighted his or her talents as a graphic designer. Interestingly enough, the computer can't recognize images like that. So it can only recognize words. So that's why I often say, don't discredit a incomplete profile or a no fit. There might be some strange reason for it. It's an extra bin for you to go into. But that application fit score definitely says, how does a person's words in their profile match to the words set up in the matching criteria versus the ideal candidate, and who you should probably take a first look at versus a last look at.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I remember inboxes, right, full of candidates. And as a recruiter, first thing in the morning, what do? You start at the top and you work your way down, right? So by filtering those out and having them serve up candidates that may be a better fit, who applied at 12:01, and you took, a half day the day before, so you have a ton of candidates to get to. You're not going to get to them till tomorrow, the next day, whatever the case may be. it allows you to get with them faster, right? Speed is so important. Now, you mentioned the incomplete profile there, and you used the graphic design example, which I'm very familiar with that. It's challenging for the computers to pick up some of those images and things like that, especially if the name is on the side. It's using a couple different fonts. A great way to showcase your skill set, right? Every part of the process for a graphic designer is going to be with that. What about candidates who may come through a chatbot or may only fill out part of their application and haven't submitted a resume? Is it still going to sort them as well if they provide an email and maybe 2 or 3 skills?
Oh, absolutely. So that's kind of the brilliance of the ecosystem, right? Is whenever we start getting a hold of you and can start gathering information about you, if it's a partial, certainly chatbot is a hard data type. When you type in a chat box, there's no interpretation needed. That's data coming straight through, and that goes right into your profile. So yeah, we can match people on even as few as 2 or 3 profiles, and they're considered a lead in the CRM system, right? So they haven't applied, they're not a candidate, but you have more information on them than they probably realize, but enough to make a decision and reach out and contact them and say, I saw you were looking at this job, want to apply, and yeah.
Makes sense. And I see a question comes through from Christina. Does it matter what type of file the resume is? Is it better for candidates to submit their resume in a Word file compared to a PDF? What does that look like?
That's a great question. No, as a matter of fact, it doesn't. So we do both equally. Really, what drives that more is how you derived that PDF file. So did you scan in a resume? Then that's a photograph of a resume, essentially, and that's not always so readable. We're working on technologies to do that, but that's very difficult. But if you converted a Word file, so something that was a native data type as text, and converted it into a PDF, that material is easily parsable. So I generally say, this has been something that's been in the ATSs for years. Anybody that's gone through the application process in the last 10 years has seen this and has seen this advice. Have a very simple resume with just the words, and you submit that just to get it into the system. But have then the resume you show during an interview, which could be fancy in all sorts of different ways. So this is nothing new. What is new is how Phenom can gather data outside of that resume. So we can get data all sorts of ways. We put in 8 different channels that people can tell us about themselves. And sometimes that's just a matter of browsing a career site and the jobs you look at and the emails that you sign up for. That tells us a lot about you.
Yeah. That makes sense, and it brings up a memory that I have from when I worked at a staffing firm. We had a recruiter that worked with us who used to print out LinkedIn profiles and take notes on LinkedIn profiles and then upload them into the system. The system's never going to pick that up, right? It's not going to pick up your notes that you scribbled on top of, and it's not going to pick up the plain text because it's a LinkedIn profile. It's not a resume. But over time, maybe.
Well, interestingly enough, we're very good at parsing LinkedIn profiles. So
okay.
Whether we go out and read the LinkedIn profile, which may wind up in a cloud sourcing type of bin, because it's publicly facing and it's out there, and we can build a profile on that. But the other thing you can do, and most people don't know this, you can actually download your LinkedIn profile to a PDF, and it basically gives a simple text format of your entire LinkedIn profile. And if you want to find a really great way and quick way, it's a little tip for anybody, a great and quick way to upload a simple profile, go into your LinkedIn profile, download a copy. It's right under your image there. It says download as PDF, and then upload that PDF, and that'll be read pretty much by every system.
Awesome. Another question comes through from Bradley. He says, how do you manage fit score and an ever-increasing list of skills? An example of this is applying using LinkedIn Apply, then Phenom pulls 34 plus minus skills. Does each of that time, a lot of skills, right? And I know that I have quite a few skills on there. How do you manage such a large plethora of skills in that sense?
That's great. And it's nice to see Bradley Cooper taking some time off from Hollywood to ask us a question here in the HR room. But loves you in A-Team, Bradley. The the answer to that is no candidate is ever penalized for a skill that doesn't match. So where this comes into play is adding ad nauseum skills on matching criteria, not a good idea. Diminishing returns after about 20 skills, because then you'll be pulling people that have these odd one-off skills but no other skills. But if you are a candidate and your candidate profile is out there, you could have thousands, 10,000s, 20,000 skills. We're only going to match you on the skills that match to the matching criteria.
That makes sense. And if Bradley is a recruiter, I can't imagine a stronger cold email than, you know, hey, it's Bradley Cooper, I'd love to talk to you, right? Or even a cold call. So use that as much as you like, Bradley. Shawn, we talked a bunch about recruiters giving feedback, right? Based upon skills. He said, thank you. CX is more fun than Hollywood. I'm going to have to take his word on that. If Hollywood's on the phone, I'd answer. But moving on. Yes, at least once. Do recruiters need to give feedback on all 4 of those matching criteria that you mentioned, whether it be location, years of experience, skills, and job title? Or if they thumbs down a candidate, could it be for a specific reason, such as the skills aren't there or the job title doesn't match?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we just released today a new interface that allows you to give us multiple reasons for a thumbs down. So thumbs down is over in the right side panel. If you hover over the fit score, you'll see at the bottom, thumbs up, thumbs down. And if you do hit a thumbs down, you could say the fit score is too high, the fit score is too low, and then one or more of the 4 reasons: skills, location, title, or experience. And that's going to supercharge our AI. So previously you would just do thumbs up and thumbs down, and AI was kind of inferring why. Now this is explicitly telling us why it's a thumbs down, and we'll adapt even faster.
That makes sense. One thing that we can't leave the show without covering is oftentimes there are a lot of concerns with DE&I when it comes to AI, right? And a lot of it has to do with bad data in, garbage experiences out. How can employers leverage AI to, quite frankly, improve their DE&I efforts as opposed to hinder them based on the implicit biases that humans naturally have?
Yeah. So actually, the way we designed this, we try to factor adverse impact out by only doing the 4 non-biased reasons: skills, titles, location, and experience. So you can try to inject bias in that. I think you're going to have a tough time doing it. As a matter of fact, I was in the shower today thinking, how can I inject bias with just those 4? And then I forgot to soap, and it was a whole mess. But the point being is we're thinking about this all the time. It's very important to us at Phenom. Obviously, as a culture, we're very diverse, and we like to make other folks diverse as well at their companies. So that's what we do there. And our data science team can actually run an adverse impact study on any client to find out, are we hitting the mark or are we not? And continuously, we also have a governance board for that. So all of these things have been run by them, and there's more than one brain making sure that we stay on the leading edge of how to remain diverse in our hiring.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. And I love the fact that you are thinking at all times as to how to essentially break AI and include bias, and how it's something that everyone is always working on in order to create the most ideal experience for everyone. I'll tell you one person you've created an ideal experience for, Shawn, and that's Tom. He said you are hands down his favorite TXL guest that we have had on here. I'm not sure if that is before or after he mentioned that you didn't soap in the shower. So we'll have to catch up with him later on that. But either way, high praise.
Yeah, and you know what? I deserve it. I mean, let's be honest. No, and thanks, Tom. The check will be coming next week.
Awesome. Well, Shawn, I greatly appreciate you stepping onto the stage right now, joining us on TXL. This has been a super fun conversation. AI is something that typically really gets complicated. You were able to make me understand it. And from a serial plagiarism person, as you so eloquently put it out. I thank you for that. And I can't wait to have you on the program again. So I wish you nothing but the best. I know you have a busy schedule, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, Devin. And thanks everybody who uses the system. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Shawn. There you have it. That was Shawn O'Donnell, product manager here at Phenom. That is his very special intro that we got for him today. Bradley, feel free to include him in your upcoming movie. He is a character, always full of jokes, and an awesome person to talk to. If you get the chance to talk to him, anyone over here at Phenom, I definitely recommend Shawn when it comes to AI. Before we go and I give you back the rest of your Thursday so that you can enjoy what plans to be a pretty exciting 3-day weekend for most, I wanted to talk a little bit about last week's episode, which was the top 5 employer brands that are getting talent experiences right. Now, typically, we would air a clip at this point in time, but because all 5 were so spectacular, I'm not going to do that. Last week, we heard from Southwest Airlines, KinderCare Education, Newell Brands, Thermo Fisher Scientific, as well as the MITRE Corporation. And just to let you in on a little secret, all of those sessions, plus 20 more, are available at IMHR. It's phenom.com/IMHR. It is a virtual event that we did a couple weeks back, all around the struggles that organizations are going through right now with such a tight labor market, the looming great resignation right behind us, and everything in between. So definitely register for that. And if not, you can always catch the replay of last week's episode on YouTube or on our blog post. But we covered everything over the course of last week, how organizations are leveraging AI that Shawn and I talked about, as well as this new era of talent experience. IMHR was a 4-day virtual event, but you don't have to sacrifice 4 days of your time. You can view it at any point on demand at phenom.com/IMHR-2021. Before we go, don't forget to like and subscribe Phenom's content. We are constantly pushing out new material, not just every single Thursday at noon Eastern time for this show, but every day. I cannot wait for you to join us next week. But in the meantime, I hope everyone has a spectacular weekend, and we will see you then. Thanks.